On Capitol Hill, control has now gone to the Republicans, and joining us today, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor joins us from Washington, D.C. Leader Cantor, first of all, how does it feel to be called Leader Cantor this morning? It's nice to say. How does it feel?
Well, Carl, I tell you, it's always Eric, so it's great to be with you. Hope you all are doing well up there.
A lot going on. I know you've got a busy day, a busy week. What is first for you? I mean, you got a million different choices in terms of areas you want to emphasize in these first few days. What's number one?
Carl, number one is to stick to the theme of this Congress, which is cut and grow. We're going to be about cutting spending, shrinking the size of government, and focusing on growing the economy so we can see some private sector jobs be created. And hopefully our actions starting today, which is going to be cutting congressional budgets by 5%, is a signal that we're dead serious about cutting spending, starting with our own.
Yeah, that 5% number, we all know, dollar terms, may not add up to a lot, but when people are now talking about this $100 billion figure pretty often, would you say that number is ambitious or conservative or somewhere in between?
Well, as you know, when you look at the yearly deficit, which exceeds $1 trillion for the fiscal year, $100 billion is a start. But we're intending to bring discretionary non-defense spending down to '08 levels, and we're also saying we're going to have every expenditure on the table ready for examination, ready for cuts. Even over in the Defense Department, we know that Secretary Gates is offering up his ideas on the way he can prioritize spending at the Pentagon so we can do more with less. That's going to be the story here for this Congress so that we can send the signal to the investors across the globe that America is serious about getting its fiscal house in order, and we can regain some sense of capital wanting to come to America and see businesses grow.
Congressman Hensarling told Larry Kudlow last night one goal might be to have a vote per week on a program you could cut, right?
Well, that was our commitment, Carl. We put in the Pledge of America that each week, following up on our U-Cut program that we put into place, we're going to have a spending cut bill every single week to begin to change the culture here in Washington.
What might be an example of that in the early weeks, and how long can that go on? Can that go on for 100 weeks until the next Congress, or the Congress after this one?
Well, the intention certainly is for that to occur, and we lived up to that, Carl, when we had the U-Cut program in place over the last 6 or 7 months of the Congress prior. And so what we'll see is each and every week we're going to ask our committees in their areas of jurisdiction to come up with spending cuts. Some of the issues that we talked about under the U-Cut program had to do with the GSEs of Fannie and Freddie and the kind of reform needed there. We talked about federal employee benefits reductions and pay scale reductions to bring them back in with market rates. We talked about some of the kind of programs that were put into place under the stimulus bill that were still in existence last year that accomplished several $1 billion worth of savings. You'll see those type of measures come out of our committees, and we'll bring them to the floor each and every week as a signal that we're changing the culture here in Washington, talking about cutting spending, not growing government.
And you obviously believe that the economy is healthy enough to take it, right?
Well, we believe, Carl, very differently than some in Washington, that bigger government is not always better. We believe in free enterprise and in sending the signal to investors that the government is not going to grow out of control. So we got a lot of work to do to bring down the deficit and speak to the fiscal sustainability of this country, but we want to put in place a growth formula for this economy. So when we hear the president come up to Capitol Hill in the next couple of weeks for the State of the Union address, we want to hear his ideas on tax reform and how we can put incentives in place for investors.
But I guess my point is, when we talk about spending cuts, you're talking about, for instance, a federal employee who may not make as much money this year and therefore might not spend as much this year, or a teacher in Ohio whose aide is let go due to layoffs. You believe the economy is healthy enough to take that kind of, I won't call it pain, I'll call it medicine, right?
Well, listen, I think everybody knows, Carl, that we're spending money we don't have right now. Families, businesses are doing the same thing. They're cutting so we can tighten the belt and live within our means. I don't think anybody relishes the notion that you're going to go and cut this or cut that, but it's a necessity. We have got to return to some sense of fiscal sanity at the federal level so that the private sector can begin to regain its confidence and we can see business grow.
All right, so you got spending cuts on the one hand. and you got your promise to repeal health care reform on the other. Can they operate on two different tracks at the same time, or does one take precedence?
Well, again, we are going to be very deliberate and consistent, Carl, because we believe changing the culture is paramount here in Washington to cut spending, not grow government. As far as the Obamacare bill, we intend to bring up a bill next week, and there will be an up or down vote on repealing Obamacare. And the reason why we believe that is consistent with what the message was from November is that, again, that bill spends over $1 trillion of money we don't have. It also has with it a series of regulatory moves by this administration that have provided disincentives for small business job growth. We're going to be about trying to make sure that we cut the regulations that have stood in the way of an expanding economy that we need so desperately.
Congressman, or Leader, wow, I got to get used to that. Leader, you say it's going to cost $1 trillion. I can tell you that the people that you're going to be arguing with are going to say it saves $100 billion over the next 10 years, and then it saves $1 trillion in the 10 years after that, and that if you're really for fiscal responsibility, that this is diametrically opposed to bringing down the budget deficit. That's
John,
what you're they're ready to say, because Corzine was on yesterday, and he said this is what the Democrats need to argue, that you're against fiscal responsibility if you're against health care reform.
Well, first of all, Joe, you know that there's a lot of gimmickry inside that Obamacare bill.
They say it's the CBO. The CBO is nonpartisan. Well, you give them what they say, they come out, and there's the fact. If you want to argue with the CBO, fine, but that's what you're going to hear.
I'm not arguing with the CBO because, as you know, they perform their job according to their directive. And the directive in the Obamacare bill had CBO count 10 years worth of increased tax revenues, which are tax hikes, but only 6 years worth of benefits. So you weren't even considering apples to apples there. And as you know, and several governors from Christie to McDonnell and others who have been on Squawk Box have said, you know, the states are very concerned that Obamacare has the potential to bankrupt them. So we know this bill is going to cost well over $1 trillion in the initial budgetary window and beyond. So we've got to make sure that we deliver the message that Republicans want to see a better way as far as health care is concerned. But as you know, we've been talking about increased competition, allowing folks more choice to purchase coverage across state lines, to make sure what is important is what people want for themselves, not for what Washington wants in a one-size-fits-all formula. That's the way we begin to bring down costs and make it affordable.
One of the big arguments that Democrats make, there are three actually. One is that it's a distraction from focusing on jobs, right? That the real action on health care is going to be in the courts, not on the Hill, and that you're not going to be able to count on the Senate the way you can count on the House. So if this is all symbolic, is it still worth it to fulfill the campaign promise that a lot of House Republicans made?
Well, first of all, Carl, let's look at the notion that this is somehow inconsistent with our mission to create an environment for job growth. What we're hearing from so many businesses, small and large, is this bill has provided a severe disincentive for investment in job growth. I mean, I know Kevin Brady was on just before, and it was about the impact of this bill on premium costs for small business. We know it has added a lot of costs and uncertainty. And so it is very consistent with our notion we want to stop the job-killing regulatory actions of this administration. And look, if the Senate wants to continue to be the impediment for results, then they'll have to answer to the people of this country. I said to the president yesterday when we talked over the phone after the convening of the Congress, I said, Mr. President, we want to work with you, but we want to work with you on spending cuts and making sure that hopefully you'll reevaluate your position as far as regulation is concerned so we can see growth return to our economy.
Leader Cantor, it's one thing to be arguing or taking opposite sides from the Democrats, but how concerned are you about keeping your own majority in place? There's more than 40 people who have come in who have been elected under the Tea Party's banners, and they've already raised some complaints about the tax bill, the compromise that was cut with the president. They were unhappy with what happened at the end of the last Congress, and quite frankly, your party's role in some of those compromises.
Well, Becky, we've got and had a tremendous lift from the activism on the part of people involved with Tea Parties. What they have done is brought a real breath of fresh air into the Congress. They're almost like the tip of the spear as far as the necessity to emphasize fiscal issues and get our fiscal house in order. That's why you're seeing today the beginning of a constitutional U.S. Congress, and we're going to focus on limited government the way our founders envisioned, so that we can begin to reduce the level of debt that we have become to rely on, and go back to free enterprise emphasis, where we can see a private sector that will grow.
Hey, so are you going?
No,
you're not going away yet.
Do we have time?
Yeah, I think we do have time. Yeah, I mean, he's the lead. He's your majority leader. Wow. Well, we wondered whether you're going to be back on, because we're not responsible for you getting this job, obviously, but certainly as a guest host here, your profile was, and we expect to see you back. You're going to come back in this chair as guest host, right?
I am waiting for the invitation.
All right. Are you waiting? Here's the one thing. We had Congressman Andrews on earlier, and there's just a huge chasm between the two parties, Congressman. He said the Republicans haven't proposed one thing to create jobs. You don't have any government programs that are going to create jobs. And you guys would say getting rid of certain government programs that prevent job creation is the way to go. But you're nowhere near each other, and we're not optimistic about the next 2 years.
Well, well, Joe, hopefully we can turn that around. But what I told the president yesterday is we should build on the kind of proposal that came forward out of the tax dispute last year. It was certainly had in it some spending that we Republicans disagreed with, but it also provided a very necessary role in stopping taxes from going up for everybody. And what we want to see is some real tax reform, Joe. As you know, we've talked about this before. We've got to be in America competitive as far as our tax code is concerned, and right now we are almost at the bottom of the barrel in terms of the developed world, and we've got to reinstill the confidence on the part of investors so we can see capital formation flourish here in this country.
One last question on the pictures of the speaker that are in the paper today. I mean, Weeper of the House in the New York Post. A lot of the other papers don't go with that. Do you know if his team or if the speaker minds if the crying is played up or not?
I don't think they give it much attention. John Boehner is a compassionate guy, and obviously it's a big deal to be the Speaker of the House.
He didn't cry yesterday. He did well. I watched for that because I predicted it earlier on that the waterworks were coming.
And my argument, Mr.
That was a millisecond.
My argument is that it's not a liability anymore. He shouldn't worry about it.
If it's, the tabloids are going to make it. I want to ask one more before.
Well, let him answer my question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
How about that?
Yeah. Well, he did. He said he doesn't care. He said he doesn't care.
I really don't think it occupies much attention in his or his team's mind.
That enough? I thought he did. But the one last thing. So, you're reading the Constitution. You're repealing health care. You had a great election in November. There are some that are going to say you're doing it again, like 1994. You're sort of. I don't know. I wouldn't say throwing it back in the Democrats' face necessarily, but do you think you can the pendulum swing the other way between now and 2012? Are you going to will the party become so obnoxious to centrists that you lose the momentum that you gained in November?
Joe, the focus is on fiscal matters. It is on getting people back to work. That's where most Americans are. We just believe that the best way to do that is to limit the reach of government and empower entrepreneurs and investors. And I think that's where most Americans are. So the reason why we are beginning with the reading of the Constitution is we think, and I think most Americans believe, it was the James Madisons of the world, it was the other founders of our country that were responsible for delivering the Constitution that had it right. And that was to make sure the balance of government versus the private sector was appropriate, which is limiting government, expanding opportunity and freedom and economic freedom for the private sector. And so, yes, political wins are as they may, but the test is, or the important piece are the results. And we're going to be about delivering results through a common sense and conservative free enterprise approach to governance.
Leader Cantor, we look forward to seeing a lot more of you on the show. Congratulations, and we'll be watching closely.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.